Good morning, everyone. It's Ron Wilkerson here in Houston, Texas, Houston-based photographer. Hey, guys, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so and ring that bell so you'll be notified of any upcoming events, especially the lives that I'm doing for you guys 4 times a week. All right, guys, we're going to get right into it this morning. What we're going to be looking at is how to read light in other people's photos to help you emulate some of these lighting setups. We will definitely be looking at a application that I think is going to be a powerful tool for you guys, which is set.a.light 3D. But starting off this morning, we're going to take a look at a number of photos from other photographers, and we can see if we can figure out exactly where the lighting is coming from. So we're on Pixel, so you guys can do this yourself. So I'm just going to go to Pixel, and I'm just going to type in, modeling as an example. So under modeling, we start to see a number of different type of photos. But what I'm really looking for is something that will indicate like a headshot, like what we see here with this photo. So if we zoom in on this photo, we can see the lighting, where it's appearing in the eyes. We can go down and look at other photos that are similar to it, and it'll give us somewhat of an indication of the direction the light was coming from. So if we go back up, now this site is very vast when it comes to content that you guys can find here. So for instance, headshots as an example. You can just type that in and you'll start to find examples of headshots, whether it be corporate headshots, traditional environmental headshots, some things a little bit more artsy, things like that. But it's here. Now, each one of these will start to give you somewhat of an indication of where the lighting is coming from when you look at the image up close. You can see here in this image, the lighting is coming from a certain direction because you can see the catch light in his eyes. You see that only half of his face is lit and the other half of his face falls into shadow. So that's a good indicator of which direction the light's coming from. Now, you'll find some images where it'll just look like it's just broad lit. The light is just coming from everywhere. But then you'll find others that are more like the first one we just looked at, where it's very obvious that the light is coming from one specific area, almost like a Rembrandt-style lighting here, where you have just a little bit of light catching the cheek off to the side of the far right eye, where the left side of the face is, well lit, as well as the back. So let's look at a couple more. Let's see. Now, this image here is broad lit because it's lit from sunlight. But as you notice, there's no catch light in his eyes because there's nothing reflecting light into his eyes. So it's a very, I'm not going to say it's a moody image or it's a bad image. It's a very good image. It's just there's nothing illuminating his eyes. There's no light source between him and the camera, that will reflect into his eyes. Now, usually when we're shooting portraits, we're looking for just the opposite. We want that catch light in the eyes. And we even emphasize that to some degree when it comes time to do our post-editing, where we're doing our dodging and burning and our frequency separation. And when we get to the eyes, we focus on the whiteness of the eyes and things like that. Good morning, Russell. The whiteness in the eyes, and we look for those details to be present in our image. We've been taught that that's an example of what a good image is supposed to look like because there's catch light in the eyes to some degree. Now, there'll always be examples of photos where you can't necessarily detect the catch light in the eyes, but even an image like this, where there's something obstructing the face, this mask, but yet you can still see a light source. You still see the light being reflected into her eyes. And that's probably from like a strip light or something like that they use for this, because there's obviously some colored lights and gels they're using in and around this helmet to get this effect. But we'll look at that as well. And let's see, what else do we have here? Anything else that's good that we can get a good example from? Now, a lot of times, a lot of photographers, especially starting out, they believe that the best lighting scenario for them is going to be natural light. And in many situations, that's true because you can get some amazing, amazing images if you understand your f-stop, your shutter speed, things like that. and your ISO is set properly, you can get some amazing shots in natural light. But you can also accent the natural light by just using simple things in your scene, like a reflector or just a piece of cardboard, white cardboard, to reflect a little bit of light into the eyes or to the face. So even from this image, we can tell that the direction of the light, from the highlights on her body, the highlights on her face, the light is coming from her left, our right. So you can see that. And there's still some catch light in her eyes, but I think it's coming from possibly the window source or whatever source this light is coming from. This is a very small image, I'm almost guaranteed. No, it's not. It's actually 15 megs, and it was shot with a 53 millimeter lens. So I'll tell you guys, be careful when you're using your 50 millimeters and your 40 millimeters and things like that, because depending on the camera model that you're using, it's going to make it very, very difficult based on which f-stop you go with to maintain that sharpness. And focusing on the eye when you're doing headshots or anything that's showing the face is going to be one of your most important skills to learn. Whether your camera has a built-in feature like eye autofocus, in most Sonys, and now I believe some of the new Nikons as well as Canons also have it. Fuji probably too. I'm not sure. I don't know much about the Fuji models, but focus on the eye, the one nearest to the lens, and at least try to keep that sharp as possible. All right, so we've looked at a couple of images here. This would apply no differently in many cases, even if you were shooting something much larger. So if you're looking at professional headshots, and for instance, you actually want to start making money as a photographer, then you're going to have to start, focusing on, what's going to look good in an environmental setting, for individuals. So whether it's, something corporate like this, that's kind of environmental, where, the individual is trying to show some of the environment that they're in, but you still want the eyes to be in focus as best as possible. Now, some of these action shots, or when people are moving around or things like that, it may be a little bit more difficult, but you can still get it done. Now, here's a perfect example of where you can shoot an environmental shot, but still keep the eyes in focus. I don't want to click on this image because for some reason, every time I click on one of them, it downloads them instead of just showing me a larger view of it. But that's probably something with this browser. All right, let's see. Is there anything else here? Probably not. Even an image like this, you still want the eyes to be in focus, even though she's not looking technically at the camera. So keep that in mind. So whether you're shooting fitness or weddings or corporate or whatever it is that you're photographing, it does not really matter. The key is to make sure that you're keeping the most important things in focus. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick run through of an application that I think is going to be very powerful for you guys if you want to possibly look into investing into something like this. Now, do you really need this software? Yes and no, if you're starting out. But one of the most powerful advantages that it gives you is the ability to create lighting scenarios based on the particular lights that you may have or lights you may be using in the future. And you can also create different size studios. So you can go from a small studio to a large studio to a medium-sized studio. So you can click on, just say like the studio here as an example, and I could go in and I could change the size of the room. So I could just go here and say, okay, right now I'm in a small room. Well, if I click here, now I'm in a medium room, and then I'm in a large room. So it's just really based on how you initially set up the application or the scene, for your shot. And if you see here over to the right is an example of what would be viewed from the camera's perspective. So right now, this is a full frame camera simulated with an 85 millimeter lens at 1/25th of a second f8. ISO is 100. And that's going to be atypical of shooting portraits where you want the nose, the hair, and everything else to be in focus versus shooting this at, 1.8 or 1.4 or something like. You would almost never do that in studio. it would almost be impossible for you to do that in the studio using strobes, unless you're using something like an ND filter or something to bring the light down. But back to this software. So as you look at this scene, you can see simply enough there's two lights, and you can scroll around and you can see that there's a hair light, and then there's the main light and the camera. The software will even allow you to measure distances between the light and, where each light is, the distance between the model, the light, the next light, the camera, so on and so on. But one of the cool things I found about this software is that it depends on which version of it you're using, but you can go in and you can, let's see, what is it? Demo mode, I believe it is. Yes. So open demo sets. Now I'm using an older version of this application. I never upgraded to the newer version, but for the basic things that I would use an application like this for, it gives me all the same tools. The newer versions are going to give you more modern models with, different hairstyles, and you can, I'll show you how you can change the model and change her hair and change their poses. So you're not locked into any specific pose when you see these images. But what's cool here is you can go through and pick different styles. So let's say we were talking about catch light. So we can choose that one, and then we can apply that to our stage. And now here is our model. We have one main light and a background light, which is creating this separation between the model and the background. So you say, okay, well, that's really cool. I like that. So what do we have here? So we have a fixed 135 millimeter. I'm a big fan of that lens on my Sony. We are 1/25 of a second at f4 and ISO of 100. So what can you learn from this software? So you could start off with this basic light setup. Get your model, your light, one light, two lights, however you want to do it. If you don't have a second light, then just use one light, right? But what's cool here is that you can come in here and add helpers. So as you see here, she's had a lot of shadowing here on the right side of her face. Her left side of her face is well lit. You can even see the catch light in her eyes, things like that coming from this main light. But we could add a reflector, and then we could take that reflector and then position it. And as you start to see here, there's a light showing you where the reflector is going to be reflecting that light from, right? And then you can still adjust it and move it around or whatever you want to. So what you're looking for is for that light to somewhat hit her, the broad side of her, the short side of her face, right? And as you see there, even in the software, it emulates what the lights would do. So you see how it's lit this side of her face. And this could be anything. You could use any of these reflectors. The simple reflectors that most people will have access to are like these little round reflectors. And you can buy these, for the most part, at like Amazon. You can get them for as little as, I've seen them as little as $20. So you could take a reflector and just, bounce a little bit of light in there if you're using like a light stand or something like that. So it's up to you. But again, like I said, so you have all of these different helpers that you can work with. You have flags, which is basically a light blocker. You have reflectors that you can use. And like I said, the upgraded version of this software has a lot more of these helpers than is on this version of it. But then you could also use like foam core. A lot of people use foam core. You can get this anywhere. And then you can, wrong one, not that light. It can be a little tricky at times. And I noticed that myself when I first started playing around with this. You have to be able to get everything just where you want it. But once you have it there, and I just want to tilt this downward. I want the light. So it's showing me where the light would be. So what I'm trying to do is get this reflector to turn downward, not the camera. I think I'm moving the camera. Let me move the camera out. Okay, let's move the reflector out, and then let's just adjust it. so we can see where it's at. Then we can just move it back in. So I just want this reflector just to be like almost under the chin, like a tabletop. And then I could move this in and then lower it. And you see how it's lighting up underneath the chin. So you have all of these different tools that you can use. I'm just using this as an example, but you get the idea, right? So if we go back over to our scene demos, and we just discard that one. And there's a few others in here. There's quite a few that you can choose from that can help you start to build out exactly what it is you want to practice. And then you can go through these and move them around and adjust them however you want to. So we're going to use this one as a headshot as an example. So we're going to go ahead and open this on the stage. And we can see here, let me adjust this around. Remember, I made this a big room. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. So we can see here we have two flags on either side of the client, the model. We have a reflector that's reflecting light up. And we also have a beauty dish that's illuminating her face. So from this shot, if you wanted to, you could go in and choose your model. You could go into posing mode, choose the head, and then you could adjust the head, move it around, and see exactly what that would look like. So if you wanted to move the arms, you would just choose an arm or a hand or the torso or a leg, whatever it is, whatever part of the body you want to choose. Then you have some preset poses that you can choose from. I'm going to turn off this. Let's zoom out. Let's go out of posing. And we're just going to pose her a little bit just so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So we could go with different poses. You know, that would be a weird one. But also remember, we're using an 85mm lens. So let's go back to one that would be more practical. So something like that, you know, a facial pose. You could then also adjust your reflector to determine where you want that light, you know, to fall, you know, if that's the case. So you said, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm happy with, you know, my posing and everything. Let's see. Then you have this slider, which is kind of cool, where you can just literally just slide through all the different poses and then change the model to see exactly, you know, which of the poses you want to have your model in. And you can just kind of just slide through there and change all these different poses and come up with ideas for your shoot. And then you start to see things that I'd mentioned before, like how the hands can cast shadows. So you have to be really careful where you're placing the hands and things like that. So I know some of you guys are, like I said, into fitness and things like that. There are a number of different models in the upgraded version of the software that you can practice for fitness shots for, let's go to this one real quick. And we'll open this. This is more glamorous, I would say. So it's going to be a 3-light setup. Actually, this is a 4-light setup. But you can look at the different lights and you start to determine, in reality, if you were setting up this scene based on the amount of lights that you have access to, how many of these lights do you really need? Well, one light is, you know, lighting the background to give it that background effect. Another light is lighting the model. One is a hair light, and the other one is more kind of a separator light. And then you look at your lens on the camera. It's a 24 to 105. I'm more of a prime guy, so I probably would have picked something different. But even if you're shooting with a 70 to 200 or a 24 to 70, you can still get this same effect here. So you're not limited to anything. You know, it's just one of those things where you just kind of experiment with these and you play with the different lighting. So what I want to show you here is, let's go back to this one. And we're going to open it on the stage. So if you zoom out here, you notice there's only one light. But you can go in and you can change the modifier on the light. You know, so if you want to change it to a different modifier, you can change the light itself. So if you wanted to go with a strip box or a large square modifier or a huge umbrella, you could do that. So like I said, you're only limited by your imagination, but each one of these, when you change them, it changes the light properties in the scene. So it helps you to understand how lighting is being applied to each and every one of these scenes. You can also add gels. There's no limit to the amount of things that you can do with this software. So what's amazing about it to me, if you're a new photographer and you're trying to learn posing, you're trying to understand lighting, and you definitely want to go into an environment where you don't look like you have no idea what's going on. You're walking into a shoot and you're like, okay, I got to get these lights set up. I have to, coach my model as to where I want her to be. This will give you a powerful outline as to what you can do. Now, what's really, really amazing about this software is that, and by the way, just to be clear, I am not sponsored in any way by this software like any of the other software that I show you guys. I'm just showing you tools that I used in the past and I still use to this day, depending on what it is that I'm working on, right? So you can look at go to the export tab up here. And then what this is going to do is going to give you like a little panel for each light, what the settings were, and you can actually physically adjust these, well, virtually adjust these lighting's properties, their power, their output, things like that. And then you can rearrange these, where they're legible to whomever is reading it. And then now you have like multiple views of the same model, and you can change these, to have different perspectives. You can even go into the scene and you can modify the scene itself so that it looks different. So like if you wanted something from a side view, let's get that right and then move it over, maybe down a little bit, so that would be a different perspective of where the lights are coming from. And then, you could send this, you can create a JPEG from this as well as a PDF. And then you could send that off to your model. You could send it off to your makeup artist. You could send it off to all these different people that you may be working with in order to ensure that everyone's on the same page when it comes to, creating this type, whatever your project is going forward. So I just really wanted to go over this software with you guys, and I'm going to show you where you can get it. You can go over to set.a.light. And of course, well, let's go here. Let's open a browser real quick. So it's set.a.light 3D. And I believe it's a 2.5 version that's available right now. It may even be a 2.6. I'm not sure. I looked at their site yesterday, and I noticed that there's some new updates related to the software. So there's also two versions of the software, from what I've been told, that you guys can purchase. So if you decided you wanted to buy this software, you can try it for free. I somehow neglected that to mention that. You can right now download this software, install it, and I believe you can use it for about 15 days. So you can really get a strong idea if this is something that's going to be practical for you. And their site has a lot of tutorials. It has a lot of cool things that can be beneficial and helpful, if you're trying to learn this software. Now, one of the things that I really like about the new version of it, and it's a good chance I'm probably going to upgrade to it just for that reason, but what it's done is similar to what Lightroom is doing, where individuals can create stages and layouts, and then they can save them and upload them. Then you are then able to download them from their platform and then break it apart and look at all the different lighting setups and how they changed and modified things. And that, again, is an even more powerful tool when it comes to the fact that you're able to look at what other photographers have done, or creators. Some of these guys that are using this software are not necessarily photographers, but they have a Facebook page group where they post a lot of things that they've created with the software. So if you look here, you have the basic version for $79. Then you have the upgraded version with all the other features for $154. And I believe you need to buy the $154 version of it to get the features that I mentioned before, being able to download other people's scenes and things like that. But the basic version of it will give you all of the new models, lighting features and things like that. And if by chance someone had a older version of it, there's also an upgrade from that all the way back to their 1.0 version of this software, So pop over to their website, download the trial, give it a shot. And if it's something that you think can help you, which I do believe it would, invest in it. Because going forward, this will be, again, a very, very powerful tool for you guys to learn and practice your lighting and practice your modeling coaching. So you can, download images from Pixel or wherever, Google, it doesn't matter. And then you start to emulate what you're seeing there. And you can say, okay, I really, really like this pose. How did they light it? You can go into your software and start to emulate or experiment with different lighting based on what you have. You may only have one light, or you may, be like me that got too many lights. But, guys, like I said, I just wanted to really do this video. I've talked about this software before, but I think a lot of people just overlook it and they're like, oh, I don't see how that's really going to benefit me. I go to these workshops and these different photographers put on these workshops and I go to their studios. Yes, but here's the problem. And I can't emphasize this enough. 99% of the time, you don't understand where the lighting is coming from, what's going on with the lighting, because everything has already been set up for you. They brought in the models, they set the models in the scene. All you have to do is just come up there and turn on your camera and probably, connect their trigger for their lights and snap, 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 snap. And the way you can tell as a photographer when this is happening is look at the poses of the models, look at the lighting, how the lighting is falling on the models. So one or two things is going on. Either the photographer doesn't have a proficient background in lighting, or they have no idea what they're doing. They're just going to workshops and taking a bunch of photos, and they're using those photos to maybe encourage other models to shoot with them, or whatever the reasons might be. I don't want it to be negative. So, we'll say for whatever reasons they're doing it, they do it. But at the end of the day, they don't learn anything. So if they're in their own element, or, someone wanted to hire them to come out and do a shoot for them, they would have no idea what to do because they don't know how the lighting was set up. They don't know how to set the lighting ratios. They most of the time don't understand the inverse square law. So these are basic things that you need to learn. Yes, it's cool to have all those special effects, lights all over the place and fog machines and lasers and all that cool stuff. But the key to it is learning the basics. And once you get the basics, the rest goes forward so much easier. One of the people that's in this live right now is Johnny Hunter, who is a grandmaster. Hear me clearly, a grandmaster in martial arts. And he teaches almost on a daily basis. And we talk often. And knowing the basics, building that foundation is the key to everything. No matter whether it's photography, audio, video, martial arts, if you want to be a mechanic, a shoe shine person, it doesn't make a difference. Foundations, the basics, is going to be the key to you growing and expanding into whatever industry it is that you're interested in being in. All right, guys, hopefully you learned something from this live, and I will repost this video later today, possibly on Facebook, Instagram, yes, definitely on YouTube. But I will be back on Wednesday for another live. I may be creating some content, in the interim, like on Tuesday, just something, little small things that I may play with. So usually when I have free time, if I'm playing with something, what I've been doing recently is I just record it. And if I feel like it, I'll talk through it. If not, I'll just go through the motions. And most of the time, you guys have learned enough that you can kind of follow along and figure out what it is that I'm doing. But if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. If you have not subscribed, please do so. And share this content with others that are learning and interested in learning photography, or you think may just be entertained by the, silliness that I, post. Anyway, guys, stay safe, wash your hands, take care of yourselves, and I will catch you guys on Wednesday live here on YouTube. Until the next time, stay safe and get out there and create something amazing. I mean, right now, go do it. Go on.